We're taking you to a Bigfoot sighting location. We're going to show you around the area. We're setting up camp between two Bigfoot sightings that were reported to us. There's also a couple of Bigfoot sightings in the same area that were reported to the BFRO. Michael Nelson writes to RMSO. Here is my information on my sightings and a little of my background. First, my background. I was raised on a ranch in southwest Wyoming near Kemmerer, Wyoming. I was born in 1952 and my sightings occurred when I was around 9 or 10 years old. My great-grandparents moved to Wyoming in the 1880s, when it was still a territory. They came to the Hams Fork Valley from St. Charles, Idaho, near Bear Lake. My great-grandparents started a homestead from which our ranch was started. We ran mainly livestock. At the highest point we had approximately 350 cattle and 14,000 sheep. Even though I worked with the cattle, I enjoyed working with the sheep the most. With that, I would spend many days and nights with my dad on the Bridger Teton, where we had sheep allotments in the spring and summer. When I was younger, around 12 and 14, I had my own pack string of horses that guided herds up the trails in the allotments. I did this until I joined the Air Force during the Vietnam era. Needless to say, when I was 9 or 10, I knew the wild animals that lived in the forest and high plains. I knew and dealt with the bears, coyotes, mountain lions, lynx, wolves. There were and have always been wolves in the Bridger Teton forest, contrary to belief. Moose, deer, elk, and many others. So when I had my sightings, I knew what I was looking at. I was over 9 years old when my first sighting occurred. My father, my sisters, my brother, and I were camped on Clear Creek. It's a drainage of Labarge Creek. My dad had left camp early to go check on one of the herds and move them to a new feeding location. It was still dark outside, but I was awake and up as usual with him to see him off. My two sisters and brother were still sleeping. After my dad left on his horse, I decided to walk to the creek and get a drink of water. Clear Creek was not a large creek, so I would get on my hands and knees and bend over to get a drink. The creek is not much more than a foot wide at this time of year, midsummer. I got my drink and still on my knees, I looked up straight into two of the largest dark black eyes I have ever seen. I was less than 12 inches away from this thing's face. We just stared at each other. How long? I don't remember. His face was dark-skinned, not dark black, but grayish black. I don't remember a lot of hair on his face. What amazes me to this day, I did not panic, and it did not frighten me. I slowly got up and followed, still looking at me. He was enormous. How tall, I can't say, but I had to bend my head back to look up at his face. I looked at its body, and that's when it turned around and started to walk. It started to walk up the hill opposite side of the creek from me. His body was covered with dark hair. It was dark black looking hair to me. I turned and walked back to camp. About 3 or 4 steps, then fear kicked in, and I ran back to the tent yelling, "Monster! Monster!" waking up my siblings. They saw how shocked I was, and we closed the wall tent doors and hid in the tent all day till my dad returned. I told my dad when he got back, and he just said it was probably a bear or a moose. I do not remember much after my dad returned. A few months later we were again camping near Labarge Creek at the Labarge Meadows. No tent this time. We had our sleeping bags laid out side by side along the pickup truck. My dad near the driver's side front tire, my oldest sister by the driver's side door, my brother and I and my younger sister by the rear tire on the driver's side next to me. I woke up in the middle of the night. The sky was clear. I remember seeing the stars and the moonlight, which lit up a large man-like figure that was leaning over, looking at my sister next to me. I didn't move, say anything, or breathe. I just stared out from under my sleeping bag cover. The thing was, again, huge, and I could hear others walking around nearby, but did not see them. I could hear it taking deep breaths, and no other sounds. It slowly stood up on its 2 legs and walked away. I slowly slid deeper inside the sleeping bag, and hid the rest of the night. I didn't tell anybody this time until I was an adult. This all would have occurred prior to 1961 and the Patterson film. I'd never heard or thought about Bigfoot or Sasquatch. It wasn't until I heard and saw the Patterson film, and then the frozen body of the monster in the freezer that came through town, that I could have put a name with these creatures or monsters. I remember I was around 16 when that show came through. You got to go into this trailer and take a close look at the creature. The lid of the freezer was open and it was covered in ice. You could see parts of its body through the ice fairly well. I thought it was cool. It really did look like the real thing.
It is Bigfoot shaped.
Well, it's got a little heel, and then here's...
Yeah. It must have just got a drink.
Ow.
Yeah, it looks pretty fresh.
Graze River Bigfoot at Murphy Creek terrifies woman near campsites. Mike G. writes RMSO, "Hello, I'm a true believer. This encounter actually happened to my sister one summer. We were up camping high in the Wind River Mountains in Alpine, Wyoming. We were camped 40 miles away from the nearest town by a small stream. That night, it started thundering, lightning, and raining, a complete downpour. Everyone was worried about a possible flash flood from the small creek that ran next to us. In the middle of the night, we decided to pack up and move. My sister went outside to change her clothes in the tent next to the trailer house. We were all in the trailer talking when suddenly we heard a loud, terrifying woman screaming. It was my sister. She ran into the trailer, crying and sobbing uncontrollably, saying that she had seen a hairy man outside. She was making her way to the tent when lightning flashed. A bright bolt of lightning lit up the sky and everything around. In that light, she saw a tall, hairy man standing in the trees watching her. When she screamed, it took off running straight up the hill and was gone. The next morning, we all went over to investigate. We didn't find any tracks or any real evidence, but there was broken branches and trees. For someone to be able to run up that hill, it was so steep and brushy that there's no way a person could have done that. So, what was it really? She swears to this day it was a Sasquatch. This happened around 20 years ago. RMSO asks, was your sister able to estimate its height or width? Mike G continues, she just said it was a big hairy man about 20 to 30 feet away standing in the trees watching her, and when the lightning lit up the sky, she saw him and screamed. Then he ran away up the mountainside on two legs, up the side of the mountain that no human could run up, so I'm sure she was probably too frightened to get any more details, but I believe her. She was so upset and crying hysterically and scared. The Graze River, 40 miles up the canyon, a camp near a small stream called Murphy Creek. That is where the incident took place. Those were the best days of my life, and I missed them. RMSO responds, hi, I grew up in that area. My great-great-grandfather was a homesteader that homesteaded about 800 acres, not too far from where all that happened. It's called the Star Valley area, next to Grover State Park. Our property actually buttons up next to that. It was a really remote place when I was a kid. Now there's quite a few more summer cabins and whatnot, but my parents inherited some of that property, and we camped there every summer. So I spent most of my summers there. From the Star Valley area up through Alpine, Jackson, the Tetons, up to Yellowstone. It's my home away from home. I'm very familiar with the area, and I love to investigate sighting reports in that area. Appreciate your sighting. Keep on watching. We're going to keep on squatching.